Stakeholders, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, at this point into...
I want to deviate from the way the lawyers spoke. I want to speak as an engineer. What is it? NEC, Chairman NEC, I'm sure your appointment is very, very new. And as such, I may not want to take on you.
Thank you. But I'm ready
Yes.
to answer your question.
Because my question would have been, you said there will be meters for all by the year 2020.
Strategic.
Have you taken cognizance of the population unmetered? Question number one. Secondly, how will you plan to meter everybody by 2020 after taking cognizance of unmetered population and propose people? Because after now, you won't stop people building. The future development, how will you take care of that? The next question is, I was a bit confused like my colleagues, whether you were speaking as a regulator or you were speaking as a service provider. In this case, whether you were NEC or DISCO or NEC DISCO. One of the your contributions, you said the DISCOs may not be able to meter in percentage, and you said the Port Harcourt DISCO is the best, and that they have provided meters or proposed 76% provision of meters. And yet, you also question the percentage. Therefore, means you don't like higher percent of metering. Because for you to question that higher percentage that you are doubting, it means you still want us to go back to lower percentage of metering to be able to give room to estimated billing. Where is your regulatory provision on those 2 points? I'm quoting from your submission. The next question is, you told us that you are not sure of the level of prepared meter. As an engineer, I'm also belonging to another committee of the House investigating excessive billing. We have gone around some of these indigenous metering companies, and they have confirmed that prepaid meters can last for 25 years. And you are telling us now that you are not sure of the durability of the meters from your submission. The next point is, how can you tell, or what is the difference between prepaid meters and smart meters? My next question is, I have read Meter Assessment Providers 2018 from your commission. How are you going to tie that with your 2020 deadline? MAP, Meter Assessment Provider 2018, it's a new regulation. And you are also, in that new regulation, if you read the regulation very well, you have also contradicting yourself by saying that the indigenous meter providers, manufacturers, will only provide 30% of the required metering provision, which therefore means you want 70% not to be metered. I don't know. Please, can you explain more on that? It is in that your regulation. In that your regulation too, you have not, like my my learned colleagues have said, your regulation has not provided any provision for punishment. Therefore, it is optional. You can accept or not accept.
Compliment what you heard from, I call him the most learned lawyer among us at the commission. the issue of metering is becoming an issue here. As an engineer, I would like to suggest that my colleague has just left, but I'd like to make it clear that we were used to analog meters. Then the advent of electronics came. Everybody knew what happened, went to digital. There was a lot of challenge in analog meters in terms of measurement, reading, and so on and so forth. Even the so-called new meters that may be digital, we have to worry about measurement errors, error due to equipment itself, error due by the manufacturers, error by the human interface in the reading of that or in calibrating of that meter. It is our goal at NEP to be sure that we have control over this meter that's going to be installed in Nigeria, to make sure that they are accurate and they are properly calibrated. It is also our goal that by this certain, those meters, we like to make them smart. I have worked in the area of smart grid, smart systems, where a smart system for smart people by smart designer is the one that has ability to communicate bi-directional. It's also reliable and sustainable and resilient to a different type of attacks. The future Nigerian meters must have these capabilities, but we can't wait until they are available. Hence, what we have so far, in my opinion, will have to be subject to a lot of change. First of all, we need meters that are going to be sensitive to different power quality problems. For example, there will be noisy signals, and if this meter captures noisy signals, it will be calibrated in such a way that it will be giving wrong measurement to customers. We have in a position here to say that we believe that our customers.
Thank you very much, the leader, honorable members, and I think that I want to start first by explaining that I quickly had to dash off and come back. Let me start by saying that estimated billing and the unfair consequences that it has on consumers is something that we must work collectively together to put an end to. So there is no doubt at all that we are aligned and on the same page about that. Let me also say that that is perhaps the biggest reason for mistrust between consumers and their service providers in the industry today. So, in spite of the fact that, as the Commissioner has said, there is some improved level of service, people now want meters simply because there is power to measure. That's the reason. If there was no power to measure, there will be no demand for meters. The biggest conversation today is metering. I receive on a daily basis dozens of text messages from consumers who have my number, which I forward to their discos. And many of them who are here represented will confirm that. So it's a big issue. And I'm saying this because of what I will say next. Just this afternoon, I've received one from one Oyenuga from Buari area of Abuja. He wants a prepaid meter. They come every day, and I refer it to our distribution department. So it's the biggest conversation, and we need to respond to the need to reduce estimated billing and eliminate it, and the need to provide more meters. Let me also say, for the benefit of members of the public, that we recognize that members of parliament are also consumers, and they represent consumers. We are also consumers. I'm a consumer. So are all of us here. So we are also affected one way or the other by what we do. So, and let me say that nobody can stop Parliament from passing a law. Nobody. The worst that can ever happen is that Parliament's law can then be subject to constitutional tests. But we can't stop you from doing what you are elected to do. And the PAMSEC has presented our position. And let me say, because I seem to get the impression that some may have understood it as an attempt to stop the law. No. The intendment of our position is not to stop the law. The intendment is to provide you with as much material for your consideration as possible in order to inform you, to advise you, to guide you based on the knowledge that we have. We hold monthly meetings with all the players in the industry. The last one was the 27th one, and I think we held that in Yola. Our next meeting is next Monday in Kaduna. So all of the players in the industry are there. So we bring some cognate experience that can help you make your decision. So, and we are happy that a public hearing such as this provides us the opportunity to allow you to take information preparatory to lawmaking. So that was the intent of that presentation. I'm not going to repeat it. I will just then try to address salient parts of it that I think you should go away with, reflect upon, and then come to the conclusion whether or not a law should be the best way. And I think I share the view from this side that the question is not whether estimated billing should continue. It should not continue. The real question is what is the best way to ensure that it does not continue without damaging the industry. I think that's the real question. And I think that what I will say next is that this bill is a well-intentioned bill. It shows that the legislature, just like the executive, hears very clearly what the people of Nigeria want. The next step is how to rebuild that trust using collaborative action of executive and legislature. And that takes me to the question, what is the diagnosis? Why is there estimated billing? Because that is what will determine what the best remedy to apply will be. Yep. And I will say first that can we look at the question of supplying meters? Because I think that is the ultimate way to eradicate estimated billing is to have meters. The question then is, can we look at the supply of meters without looking at energy theft? Because that is the concomitant side of meter installation. We have, from our monthly meetings, we review as part of our rating of discos their ability to meet their meter level obligations. It's part of their rating requirement, and we rate them every month and present results, I think, quarterly. Liquidity is a condition, customer service response is a condition, and these are the criteria by which we do it. And this is important because we now found out that a particular disco that installed, I think, about 10,000 meters, within a month after installation, 8,000 had been bypassed. So you must look at the other side in order to inform yourself about what the best way is. Because every law needs to strike a balance amongst all of the players in the industry. In making that law also, you must recognize that the commodity that is being sold, power, does not belong to the discos. The commodity belongs to those who produce it, the Gencos and Embed who buys it in bulk. They are the ultimate people who expect to receive their monies back. And they are not getting fully enough. I also ask the question whether we can then, if we know that meters are the answer, can we mandate and criminalize installation, prompt installation of meters without a full knowledge of the existing capacity? Because if you ask me to do what I can't do, if you ask me to do in 1 month, what ordinarily should take me 6 months to do, you are just going to punish me for nothing. So in that respect, I would urgently recommend, and I see some of them here, that we also speak to the meter manufacturers, some of whom are represented here. What can they really produce? Some of them are here. We need also to speak to NEMSA, the safety agency, who batch tests meters to ensure that they are safe for installation, and also to speak to NAPTIN, who train electrical installers, because we must have the right people install these appliances. Otherwise, they become fire and safety hazards if they are not properly installed. We must understand also that in order to install a meter, there must be a physical inspection of the property. And if the place to be metered is not inspected, you cannot appropriately meter, because you need to now determine load, the type of meter, the type of consumption, and then the type of meter. Sometimes people are not at home. And let us draw experience from what has happened in the past, even when we have to do things like simple national ID registration. So in setting a threshold as to whether to criminalize and whether to start immediately, because I've also seen some suggestions about whether or not to defer the commencement date, these for me are things we should take into consideration. Let me then say that whether it is substantive legislation or subsidiary legislation like regulations, they will take some time to come into force and to have effect. Either one that we choose. They won't have effect overnight. And therefore, in deciding what to do, I will urge you to also look at the meter asset provider regulations, which clearly you have looked at, and see that in about 3 or 4 months since its enactment, it has gained some traction. Can we strengthen that traction, or do we want to duplicate it, or do we want to reverse it? What I know that it has achieved is that, first of all, it gives access very quickly to an existing fund of about 40 billion. I don't know the figures offhand now because interest is accruing on the fund. This was monies that was paid by government before in 2003 for meters. That program ended in court. It was this administration that solved the court case, converted the judgment into a loan, subject to the provision of a guarantee to government to use that money through meter asset providers to buy meters and install as a private business. But there are processes to be undertaken under the MAP regulation in order to access that fund. You must work with DISCOs. And I know that 2 DISCOs have taken initiative and are looking at how to deal with this. I know of Yola DISCO and I know of Abuja DISCO. I hear that other DISCOs are also in conversation with our policy arm in the ministry. That takes me to a very important point I have made before, which has been misunderstood, and I think that I should make that point here again. Because one of the reasons why meters are not enough, apart from the logistics, is also the financing ability to provide the meters. Yes, it is true that the DISCOs are under contract to supply meters. But I hold the view that provision of meters is not their core business. And I emphasize the word core business. Supply of energy is their core business, which is taking energy from 33 kV 11 from TCN and channeling it to homes through their lines and transformers. That's their core business. It is incidental to their core business to have meters so that they can measure what they deliver. And therefore, it seems to me that it is better to allow private businesses under the map face metering as a core business. And I say this also in the context that if, as a disco, I had 1 naira only to invest, and my transformers and my lines were bad, and my consumers were also without meters, I will invest that money in transformers and lines instead of in meters. Because the meters won't give me money if there is no line to take the power there. So, yes, they have a contractual responsibility to supply meters, but it's not their core business. And licensing new people whose core business will be metering is perhaps the way to go, and that is what MAP has sought to do. And I must say again, for the benefit of the public, that there is a meter at every point of the value chain, from gas to GENCO to transmission to distribution to consumer. But the largest bulk metering need is at the consumer end, because everybody meters what he supplies. From the day they pump gas into the system is metered. So, I would therefore say that, yes, you can amend the law, but what I would urge, in order to get to where we certainly both want to get to, is to amend the law to empower NEC to issue regulations that are more far-reaching, that have wider enforcement capacities, and that remain continuously flexible as changes happen so that they can quickly change them. In also taking a decision which way to go, I will also emphasize the need to pay attention to the fact that the number of meters that can be produced annually today compels us to bear in mind, while making this law, the need to balance the need to create jobs locally. We lost this opportunity with the telephones. We imported almost all our telephones from a country we are now going to borrow money from. We created the wealth for them. And so if the capacity is still not there, perhaps we may want to move a little more this thing and make a legislation that incentivizes investment in capacity building. Meter production and meter assembly factories are easy things to deploy. They are small and medium businesses. They are not very big things, machines that can be bought. So the capacity can be grown in a matter of months. As I said, process of meter installation, it takes some time. You have to inspect, you have to visit. All of this must be taken into consideration before we make it a criminal offense. And I also make the point that as we compel the discos in whatever way to eradicate estimated billing, we must protect them from losses they suffer from theft. It's a two-way traffic. The only other point, and I will close there, is that after 13 years of enactment and almost 5 years of operation in the privatization, perhaps all of the things we have seen suggest the need for a second look at the law now. And mark me, I still believe that it's an outstanding piece of legislation, but there is no perfection in what human beings do. And those who enacted it perhaps did not see today. And those of us who are here today, now seeing today, can use today to project tomorrow. So I will support some more holistic but remedial amendments that focus on the following areas. One, decentralizing some of the existing grid systems. And I think that's what the chairman was saying. Promoting more mini-grids. That's the future, that's the way. So while we are managing the big grid, we must decentralize. Legislation that allows us to do that more quickly with very minimum disputes and which protects everybody. It must be done without hurting too many people. Some people will feel pain. Policy affects people differently. But we must look at the larger, and that's how meters will come anyway. Because it's then easier to have 100 small franchises metering residents association of 200 houses quickly than one person metering 20,000 people. So I would recommend that. And I would also recommend some form of mandatory arbitration before people go to court. Because since the law came, there has been in fact, they would be better know how many cases they are defending. So, and the discos themselves are facing legions of court cases. Expenses that could have been used to service, you paid for defending court cases. We need to kind of find a way to protect the interests of citizens, and I think arbitration is a much more efficient and effective way. It's not just the number of cases, but how quickly they are disposed of, how efficiently. And also a focus on contract enforcement. Some people have signed contracts in this industry and have gone to court to get a court order to prevent them from enforcing their own contracts. That must stop. So legislation along that line will be helpful. Of course, I've said very severe sanctions for energy theft, sanctions that make it cheaper to comply than to breach. So if you have very hefty penalty, it may become sensible to just go and pay the money instead of trying to steal energy. And legislation that also facilitates improved disclosures and transparency. The more open an industry is, the more successful it becomes. The aviation industry is one such industry that I know. Everything that happens is open. And so you have improved safety, you have improved regulations, you have changes very rapidly. Leader, honorable members, that is my intervention here. Thank you very much for your time.